Localized torrential rains started falling across the central region and inland areas of the southern regions on Sunday, with the Korea Meteorological Administration expecting periods of moderate to heavy rain throughout the week.
일요일부터 중부지방과 남부지방 내륙 곳곳에 집중호우가 내리기 시작했습니다. 기상청은 이번 주 내내 장맛비가 이어질 것으로 예보했습니다. The first expression here is localized torrential rains.
Yes. So localized means that it is focused on one certain area.
Right.
So it might not be all across the nation or all across Seoul, but in certain districts or certain areas. Torrential rain is actually one of the bigger words. Torrential. It's any amount of rain that is considered especially heavy. So if you have raining cats and dogs,
Right.
then you would say, oh, this is torrential rain.
torrential rain, 집중호우인데, 그러니까 localized라는 것 자체가 it's in one area. It's not all across the country. 이런 의미가 되겠죠. I think you use this in medicine as well when you talk about anesthesia.
Yes.
So there's general anesthesia, which is for your whole body.
That's right.
And then I think it's called localized anesthesia.
That's
for
right.
just certain parts of your body.
That's right. So you can say localized topical steroids or localized topical anesthetics, which means that it's only in certain one area and you put it on top of your skin, then it means that it's only,
아하, 이게 마취 얘기할 때 부분 마취, 전신 마취 하는데요. 부분 마취 할 때도 이 localized라는 표현을 사용합니다.
That's right.
What about inland areas?
Inland areas, I think that you can guess from the word itself what it means. It's the opposite of coastal. So away from the body of water, we are living in a peninsula.
Right.
So we have three sides of water. However, we do have inland areas where regions are not so close to the ocean or the beaches. So inside, it means closer to the mountains or just without any kind of body of water.
It's literally inland. But it's pronounced inland, right?
That's right.
In this
Inland.
case, inland areas, 내륙 지역이죠.
A survey conducted among 645 companies with 5 or more employees has shown that workers are taking an average of 3.7 days off for summer vacation this year, according to the Korea Enterprises Federation.
한국 경영자 총협회 경총은 5인 이상 규모의 645개 기업을 대상으로 한 조사에서 올해 학예 휴가 기간을 정해놓은 기업의 평균 휴가 일수가 3.7일로 나타났다고 발표했습니다. Well, this survey was conducted.
That's
Can you
right.
tell us about that?
So the verb conduct is when you is used when you organize or carry out something. So it's exactly that because a survey was carried out among 645 companies.
그렇죠. 이제 어떤 설문조사를 실시하다라고 할 때 conduct something이라고 얘기를 하고요. And workers will be taking an average of 3.7 days off for the summer vacation this time around.
So the expression we're looking at here is take days off. It means that you're taking vacation days or you're leaving the company, but not for good. You're actually just leaving for the holidays. So you're taking some holidays or some days for a vacation.
Yeah, at the end of a work day, you could say, I'm off now.
Yeah.
And that means you're going to leave the office and go home, for example.
Exactly.
But if you take days off, that means you're going to take a break.
Exactly.
휴가를 며칠 쓴다라는 뜻이 되겠죠. 자, 그러면 좀 자세히 보겠습니다. This is, of course, it doesn't mean, the number of days that people are voluntarily taking off. It's the number of days that companies have allowed people to take off as summer vacation days.
That's right. Russia has condemned Washington's decision to supply Ukraine with cluster bombs, saying it was aimed at prolonging the war and was an act of desperation.
러시아는 우크라이나에 집속탄을 지원하기로 한 미국의 결정을 가리켜 전쟁을 장기화하려는 속셈이자 절박함 속에 나온 행동이라고 비난했습니다. So, according to Russia, They say this is Washington's move to prolong the war. Can you tell us about this?
Yes. If you're prolonging something, you're intentionally making it longer. And kind of lengthening something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Making it long. It says, long in the actual word.
Exactly.
prolong이라고 하면은 장기화하다. And it's an act of desperation. What about this term?
Yes, exactly. If you're desperate for something, you want something very badly, and you're anxious about it, and you might do something that actions might actually come before thinking about it. And so it's actually saying that you've actually not thought this through. It was an action that came before your logical thinking.
An act of desperation. 여기서 act는 연기가 아니라 행동이죠.
Exactly.
Action. So an act of desperation은 절박함에서 나온 행동. If something is an act of love, 사랑에서 나온 행동 이렇게 말할 수도 있을 텐데. Okay.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said that decoupling of the world's two largest economies would be disastrous for the two countries following meetings that she described as a step forward in putting U.S.-China ties on a surer footing.
중국 방문을 마친 제넷 옐런 미국 재무장관이 미국과 중국의 디커플링은 양국 모두에게 재앙이 될 것이라고 말했습니다. 그는 이번 협의가 보다 확고한 양국 관계의 발판을 만드는 일에 접근했다고 평가했습니다. The first expression to look at here is, of course, decoupling. Let's
That's
talk
right.
about that.
So decoupling, it might not really ring a bell to you, but if you take the words aside. Couple is two people together, right? If you decouple that, they break up, right?
So basically, you're just taking two things that were together and splitting them apart.
Yes, but it is a political term. So if you look deeper into it and if you look at the definition, it's actually refers to the act of reducing or eliminating the interdependence among countries, whether it be economy or trade relationships. So you're actually saying, okay, we're going to break the ties between the two countries.
Sure. 그러니까 이게 디커플링이라는 것은 쉽게 생각해서 분리하는 겁니다.
Yes.
커플이었는데 이제 떼어놓는 이런 느낌이라고 보시면 되는데요. 그러나 우리가 이제 정치적으로 봤을 때도 뉴스에서는 이거를 탈동조화라고 번역을 하죠. So Janet Yellen, the US Treasury Secretary, has said the United States and China will not decouple. 네, 이런 표현이 일단은 나왔고요. The next expression was that they've gone a step forward in putting bilateral ties on a surer footing.
Yes, a surer footing. A footing is actually where you place your feet. So if you have a sturdy footing or a sure footing, it means that where you place your feet, the ground or a step is very stable.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. A sure footing itself would be something that is very positive. 굉장히 확고한 발판. But a surer footing means it's gone a step further. 보다 확고한 그런 양국 관계의 발판이란 의미가 되겠습니다. And earlier on, of course, the term decoupling, it's used in business news, and especially when it comes to companies that are overseas,
Yeah.
in this case, American companies.
Korean midfielder Lee Gang-in has signed for Paris Saint-Germain following 2 seasons with the Spanish side RCD Mallorca, making Lee the first Korean to don PSG or PSG's red and blue through 2028.
한국의 미드필더 이강인 선수가 최근 2시즌을 보낸 마요르카에서 이적해 파리 생제르맹 PSG와 계약했습니다. 이로써 그는 2028년까지 이 팀의 유니폼을 입고 뛰는 첫 한국인 선수가 됐습니다. So he signed for Paris Saint-Germain.
Yay!
You're very excited, aren't you?
I am.
Tell us about signing for a team?
Yes.
Or,
Way
what
to
does
go.
it mean?
뽀시래기. Yes. Yes. I mean, Lee Gang-in is one of the best players on our national team at the moment. And I think it's an incredible feat for him because Paris Saint-Germain only signs with the best players.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And he said that it was incredible to join the team. It's actually one of the biggest clubs in the world.
Right.
And it has the greatest players in the world as well. And one of my favorite players, Leo Messi, was also joined with the team. And it's also... he's a very young player, and it's a great way for him to start in another chapter of his career.
Sure, absolutely. Before we started the show today, Juyeon was going, yay!
I was even louder.
Yes, exactly. She was so excited. I'm glad our listeners got to get a glimpse of that. But yeah, I mean, it's very good news. And as we said, he's the first Korean to don,
Yes.
this uniform.
If you don something, you're actually wearing something, but it's more than wear because it has a slight kind of honor to it as well.
okay.
Yeah, so you get to wear the uniform.
그렇죠. 유니폼을 입게 된다라는 뜻으로 you could say wear, but in this case it says to don,
Yes.
D-O-N, which takes me back to Don Lee.
Oh.
His name does not mean to wear,
It keeps on coming back. Yes.
but it's the same spelling.
Yes, that's right.
So yeah, very good news indeed.
The Korea Economic Research Institute has reported that the economic ripple effect of Hallyu, or the Korean wave, totaled 37 trillion won, propelling Korea's cultural influence ranking in the world from 31st to 7th in just 5 years.
네, 한국경제연구원이 발표한 보고서에 따르면 지난 5년간 한류 열풍으로 인한 국내의 경제적 파급 효과가 총 37조 원에 달하며 한국 문화의 세계 영향력은 31위에서 7위로 급상승한 것으로 나타났습니다. 경제적인 파급 효과부터 볼게요. This is our first expression, economic ripple effect.
You might also hear multiplier effect. We used that a lot when I was in school. So any kind of ripple effect. Like think if you throw a stone into some water and then the ripples that are created, right? Multiple.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful and many are created from it. That's the idea of a ripple effect. What the effect that one event has on other events. When we're talking about economic events, money is generated and then more money is generated and more money is generated because of that initial injection.
Ripple, as Ray just explained there, is when you throw a little pebble or a stone into the water and those little rings.
Yeah,
that come
rings.
out.
That's a good way to put it.
맞아요. 그런 게 이제 파급 효과, ripple effect's,죠. But the word economic comes before it here. And as you said, you could have other words coming before ripple effect.
Right, and the way that I think about it is, how big is the stone that goes into that water?
Right.
So if it's a lot, think about what they did during the pandemic in the States. $1.3 trillion, boom, dropped into the system.
Big stone.
That's a huge stone. And then the ripples have been really, really big, but then also led to a lot of inflation.
Well, the ripple effect of Hallyu, or the economic effect of that.
Very good for Korea.
It's very good, yeah. And what about to propel something?
Well, in this case, it means to make this happen faster, to spur it. But a propeller is on an airplane, right? Or a helicopter, something that it moves you.
그렇죠. Propeller is the noun, and then to propel is the verb. So you're making it move faster.
Make something move. Make something move faster. Just as though a helicopter would make an airplane move.
Right. Have you ever been on a helicopter?
No.
I haven't either, but it's one of those things I really love to do.
Really? Yeah. The whole Kobe
Someday.
Bryant thing scared me, but yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So to propel, and that was another expression.
The government has launched the so-called K-Rice Belt project to support rice production in 8 impoverished African nations, namely Ghana, the Gambia, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Senegal, Uganda, Cameroon, and Kenya.
아프리카의 쌀 증산을 위해 한국의 벼 종자와 농업 기술을 전파하는 K-라이스 벨트 사업이 시작됐습니다. 사업에는 식량난을 겪고 있는 가나, 감비아, 기니, 기니비사우, 세네갈, 우간다, 카메룬, 케냐 등 총 8개의 아프리카 국가가 참여합니다. All right, so impoverished nations, what sort of nations are we talking about
Very
there?
poor. Impoverished just means very poor, extremely poor.
그렇군요. 자, impoverished, very poor. And then we have a list of the countries and it says namely da 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 da.
Right. In this case, though, like usually you use namely when you want to give more detailed information about something that you're discussing.
Yeah.
In this case, they name all of them.
Right.
But like if I might say, as you know, like I'm a big sports fan.
Yeah.
But namely, hockey, baseball, and American football.
아하, 스포츠를 다 좋아하긴 하지만 특히 hockey, American football 이런 것들을 더
Right.
좋아해.
So you're like, oh, you like sports? You must love table tennis. Like, actually, you know what? I'm not.
Synchronized swimming.
Right.
No.
And I'm actually not really into that. I'm
Got it.
namely into these sports.
Right. So you're naming it.
You're naming it. Right. Like it's like if you say I think everyone knows you're into musicals.
Yeah.
Are you into everyone? Like what are your
No.
I know Les Miserables is like your big one.
I'm not into every single music. I actually don't like Phantom that much. I mean,
Yeah?
it's going to be controversial. I know some people love it.
That's the only one I've ever been to.
Oh, okay.
But I was like 12 years old.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to sports, I know I'm notoriously bad at, sports, but I do love swimming. So there are things that I actually like and love and I'm quite good at.
And do you follow international swimming a little bit, or
Actually,
during the Olympics? That's
during
probably
the Olympics, just
okay.
during the
during the
Olympics.
Olympics. Yeah.
Not normally though, but yeah. And actually, I also wanted to mention the way it's listed. These countries, normally in English, you would list it in alphabetical order, or if it's your country would come first, and then you would mention the other countries. Here, it's interestingly enough, in the Korean alphabetical order. 가나다 순으로 된 거를 그냥 영어로 바꿨어요. That's why we have G and then S, U and then C and K because this is just based on the Korean phonetic alphabet.
okay.
그러면 이제 가, 그다음에 사, 우, 카 이렇게 the Korean alphabet is the order that we've used here. This is not typical, but this is what
Makes
we've done.
sense.
It does indeed.
It all makes sense now.
Yes.
The light just went on in my head. Cambodia has urged Ukraine not to use cluster bombs after Washington announced plans to send the weapons to Ukraine to fight Russian troops, citing the country's painful experience of U.S. cluster munitions dropped in the early 1970s, a foreign legacy that has left tens of thousands maimed or killed.
캄보디아가 1970년대 초반에 미군이 캄보디아에 투하한 집속탄으로 수많은 인명피해가 발생한 점을 언급하면서 우크라이나에 미국이 제공한 집속탄을 사용하지 말 것을 촉구했습니다. Let's look at two expressions here. The first one is a foreign legacy.
So this means something that was brought to the country in the past. So legacy is always something from the past that has a lasting effect.
Yeah.
Or it's still remembered in the present day.
What's notable here is that it's negative in this sense, but normally I think when you think of a legacy, it's quite positive.
It can be, but it also not always.
Right.
Right? Like I don't know. Like think of the issues that still exist between Korea and Japan. That's a legacy,
also a legacy.
of Japanese imperialism.
Right, exactly.
So like it's not always good, but it can be, but not always.
I see. Well, in this case, definitely it's a negative thing.
In this case, definitely a negative thing, right?
It's something that has come from the past.
From the past, and how they've said it's a foreign legacy. It's a weird phrasing, but
yeah,
brought from a foreign
Right,
country
right.
to Cambodia, and I've seen people who were victims of this.
Yeah, and because there are still some munitions that are probably in the ground
they are.
somewhere, and they don't know where they are, and people die just trying to dig them up and to find them.
Or they get maimed.
They get
which
maimed. Yeah, let's look at that.
Anyone who's, I'm sure a lot of people have been to Cambodia. A lot of our listeners have been there. You see people with missing limbs fairly regular, especially in the tourist areas. I remember there was like a band that they were playing outside. This was in I think it was in Siem Reap, where Angkor Wat is, and they were a band. They were like different amputees, missing legs, arms, but they could play music. They were selling CDs. So you see people. So if someone's maimed, they're severely injured. Usually, a body part is missing. Normally.
Can you give us the spelling for maim?
Maim, M-A-I-M-E-D.
maimed라는 것은요, 이제 신체 장애가 있다라는 뜻인데 여기서는 구체적으로 limbs가 없다. 뭐 사지 중에 하나가 없거나 그래서 amputee의 그런 상황을 설명하고 있다고 얘기를 해주셨어요.
So an amputee is somebody, so it's a noun, who has had a limb amputated.
Yeah, so a leg or an arm or something
Right.
is missing.
Right, and you do see it there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's because of this. It's because of
The cluster bombs.
the cluster bombs and the minefields that were created when they were trying to get rid of the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah, they're still living with it to this day,
Yeah.
and they're saying, so don't use it.
Don't even go there.
Don't
Like,
even
why?
go there. Yeah, why would you want to repeat this awful history?
Earth has smashed a 120-year record for its hottest season, with El Nino gaining strength and setting the stage for a summer of unprecedented heat that is expected to be just the beginning of multiple catastrophic records, according to a report by a local U.S. media outlet.
지구가 12년 만에 가장 높은 기온을 기록했습니다. 미국 현지 언론은 엘니뇨가 강해지고 있는 가운데 뜨거운 날씨는 이제 시작일 뿐이며 최고 기온에 대한 기록이 앞으로 계속 경신될 것이라고 전했습니다. All right, two expressions here as always. The first one is to gain strength.
Get stronger.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Get stronger.
El Nino is gaining strength. 점점 강해지고 있다라고 했고요.
I remember the first time I ever heard of El Nino. It was in the late 90s, and it was in the wintertime, and it was the first Christmas that I ever grew. Like, it would have been about, I think it was, I want to say 97, 96, 97, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And it was the first Christmas that I ever experienced in Canada where there was no snow.
Ah.
It didn't snow.
Was it in the weather report? Or how did you hear
Oh,
about
they
it?
talked about it all the time.
In the
It was
news?
yeah,
No,
because
I see,
like
right.
because at that time of year, and like I think I've told you about this before, is in Canada people make their own skating rinks in their backyard
Yeah.
if they have space.
Yeah.
So nobody could make rinks that year. So that was like
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, and
why,
like-
why don't we have snow?
and this family down the street from me, they made like an awesome rink every year.
Right.
So we couldn't use it.
Right,
Like he couldn't make it. At least I don't even think he got one that year.
And the culprit was
El
Nino.
Nino. Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
remember
El Nino
learning about
does
this.
that.
Yeah, exactly. I remember in textbooks, El Nino, La Nina. You
Yeah.
know, and, but yeah, I mean, it's not just a textbook thing
It's
at all.
real.
It's very real. It's gaining strength. And setting the stage for a summer of unprecedented heat.
I think we just used the word unprecedented when we talked
did.
about how Korea went from being a recipient to a donor in just 50 years or so, which
Sure.
is unprecedented. No other country's ever done that before. So you can understand unprecedented means it's never been done or never been seen, never been experienced. So this type of heat, we've
Never seen it
we've never
before.
felt it before.
전례 없는 그런 이제 높은 기온을 말합니다.
The world's first human-robot press conference. 9 humanoid bots took questions from journalists, with several of the robots using generative AI to produce content from prompts, yielding sophisticated responses that even surprised their creators.
세계 최초로 인간과 인공지능 로봇의 기자회견이 열렸습니다. 9대의 휴머노이드 로봇들이 참석해 취재진의 질문을 받았으며 일부 질문에 대해서는 아주 정교한 반응을 보이며 제작자조차 놀라게 하기도 했습니다. Humanoid bots, it says here.
Human-like robots. They
Yeah.
look like humans, so they have heads and 2 arms and 2 legs. They don't look like R2-D2.
Right, exactly. It's not just a can
No,
or a round
right,
thing. It's,
right.
They actually have facial
Faces.
Yeah,
They're
details
meant
and
to
everything.
look as human-like as possible.
네, 인간과 비슷한 로봇, humanoid bots. And AI, several of the robots using generative AI to produce content from prompts.
Yeah, that's a weird usage of this term, to be honest with you, because content is usually when you make something
Yeah.
for. Usually, we use it for online.
Yeah.
Right. Usually,
We use
what
that
do you produce online, right? What videos you make on your social media accounts or on YouTube, or like what we're doing right now. We're producing content
Yeah.
for EBS. So content is when you make something
Sure.
that people can consume. But in this case, what they did, what the
Yeah.
robots did, was they gave answers, right? And they it was spoken too.
Yeah.
So they were able to take in questions and then respond.
그러니까 컨텐츠를 만들다, produce content. 컨텐츠를 생산하다의 의미이긴 한데요. 이 맥락상 반응하다라고 보면 되겠습니다.
A new survey shows that 6 out of 10 parents enrolled their children in private education before entering elementary school, with around half taking 3 or more different subjects a year.
네, 한 조사에서 학부모 10명 중 6명이 자녀가 초등학교 입학하기 전부터 사교육을 시키고 있으며 이 중 절반가량이 연간 사교육 과목 수가 3개 이상이라고 답했습니다. 먼저 이거부터 봐야 되겠죠? Enroll children in private education.
And you can enroll children, you can enroll yourself as well into any kind of course or school, hagwon. Enroll, that verb is used when you're signing up for some type of course that you're going to study.
Yeah, enroll in university.
Right, enroll university, exactly.
네.
Even just a course, like, you might take like a 2 or 3 month course, for example. You could say you've enrolled in that as well.
Enroll in a course. 네, E-N-R-O-L-L, enroll. It means you're taking that class
Right.
or course or you're going to that school.
You've signed up.
You've signed up. 네, 그렇죠. 무언가에 이제 등록했다라는 건데 여기서는 학교의 개념 아니면 뭐 어떤 코스가 될 수도 있고요. 과정이 될 수도 있고.
I guess we could use register as well, but
Yeah.
register, like you could say, oh, I registered for that course. You could say that. Register can also be used for other things, like you've joined a sports league, for example,
Right.
or you've registered for like a membership, for example.
But you wouldn't say you've enrolled in your health club.
No,
Right.
exactly. You
Yeah.
wouldn't do that at all. You wouldn't, or you wouldn't say you've enrolled on the local soccer team.
Right. So enroll is pretty much for school.
Pretty much for
something
school. Yeah,
academic.
exactly.
Okay. And to take a subject.
That means, like in Korea, everyone always says to study, right?
study, yeah.
Study. We have to study this.
Right.
Whereas English speakers usually use study when you're just reviewing what you've already learned in school, right? You're preparing for your test. You're studying the material. So taking a class, it's the same way that Koreans would, we have to, what are we studying?
Yeah.
But it just means what classes are you going to? What are you learning?
그래서 우리가 뭐 수업을 듣다 이렇게 얘기하기도 하는데요. Take a class. 여기서 이제 take a subject. 어떤 과목을 택하고 그 과목의 수업을 듣는 거죠. It's confusing, I think, because the verb we use in Korean for taking a class is 듣다.
So to listen to a class,
Yeah,
right?
but do you
also
say
in
that
English.
in English?
No.
No.
But why do we say take for everything? Like when I complain about, sometimes Korean verbs being confusing, my wife will say to me, do you know how many different things you use take for? Like, take your phone with you.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Bring
Take
it with
a
you.
picture.
But then she's like, take a bus. Where do you
Take a
take the
bus.
bus? You
Yeah.
put it under your arm and
It's
you
one of those
take a shower
verbs.
with you somewhere to the park?
That's true. So many different translations for that one verb.
Exactly. So for
now.
classes, and that's a natural thing. Like, so say you meet
Yeah.
your friend again, at university, right?
Yeah.
I bump into somebody I know. This would happen. Oh, what classes are you taking this semester?
Exactly. Not what classes are you studying?
No, what are you
Definitely
studying?
not what are you listening?
Right. What
Not
classes
that.
are you listening to?
Right.
No, what are you taking?
What are you taking? That's the verb to use. Take is such a useful verb, and it's used in so many different ways, but in this case, a subject or a class.
Exactly. Health authorities in Jeju have confirmed that a woman contracted SFTS, a tick-borne disease that does not yet have a cure or vaccine, after coming into contact with a stray cat.
제주 서귀포 보건소가 관내 거주하는 한 여성이 길고양이를 만진 뒤 중증 열성 혈소판 감소 증후군인 SFTS에 감염됐다고 밝혔습니다. SFTS는 진드기 매개 바이러스로 현재까지 백신이나 치료제가 없는 것으로 알려져 있습니다. This is a tick-borne disease. Let's look at something-borne disease.
Right. So that means how you catch it.
Yeah.
So in this case, ticks are little. They're not insects, but they're they're similar to spiders.
We say 진드기, but yeah.
It's
I think-
arachnid in
Right,
English, so
right.
it means they have 8 legs. So scorpions, spiders. Their ticks are really, really small, and they live and they suck the blood of other animals.
Yeah.
So when it says a tick-borne disease, that means the ticks carried
Right.
the disease.
Right. During COVID, we often heard the term airborne,
disease,
which means
yeah.
it travels through the air.
Right.
Something could be a waterborne disease,
Sure.
which means the disease can be contagious through water.
Right. If you're in water, that
Yeah.
might be how you get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
borne은 B-O-R-N-E 이렇게 쓰는데요. 앞에 단어를 붙여서 이제 이런 거를 매개로 하는 바이러스다라는 의미가 되겠습니다. tick-borne disease, 진드기를 매개로 하는 virus or disease. And to come into contact with something or someone.
From what I read, she actually pet the cat, touched it.
Yeah.
So contact means to have some physical touch.
Right.
So and most stray cats, I don't know, they don't let you pet them. And I try sometimes.
quite odd, yeah.
I try to get them to come over to me.
They don't even come close.
No. Some actually in the little mountain I go to, they're because people feed them. Now they're getting more used to people.
Right.
But I really don't try to touch them because I know they could have fleas or they
Sure.
could be dirty. But that's what coming in contact means, to physically touch something.
That is true. Come into contact, to physically touch. 접촉하다. Okay, and SFTS is short for severe fever with, I shouldn't have started reading
I was
this,
letting you do it.
thrombocytopenia syndrome.
Nailed it.
Is that right?
It's close. It's as good as I was going to do. I thought you were going to say, now, what does that stand for? And I was like, okay.
Ray, what does...
I practiced it like 10 times on the way here.
Oh,
yeah.
well, let's give you a chance to say it then.
Severe fever with thrombocytopenia syndrome.
There you
And what does that mean? Well, it means a disease that common symptoms of this include fever, fatigue, which means to be tired,
Yeah.
loss of appetite, gastrointestinal symptoms, so tummy problems,
Sure.
muscular symptoms, so you might feel sore and stiff, and then neurological abnormalities as well. So you might have some neurological means to do with your brain.
Yeah, exactly. So those are some of the common symptoms. Fever, 열이 나는 거죠. Fatigue는 이제 매우 피로감을 많이 느끼는 것이고, some other things, gastrointestinal symptoms는 이제 속이 굉장히 불편한 그런 상황이 될 수도 있고요.
You're going to have an upset tummy.
Yeah, and neurological abnormalities to do with the brain. So these are just some of the
Yes,
symptoms.
the common ones
Yep.
anyways.
Okay.
U.S. President Joe Biden has said that Ukraine is not ready for NATO membership, adding that until Kyiv can be considered to join its ranks, Washington would continue to provide President Volodymyr Zelensky and his forces the security and weaponry they need to try to end the war with Russia.
조 바이든 미국 대통령은 우크라이나의 북대서양조약기구인 나토 가입은 시기상조이며 나토 회원국에 가입하기 전이라도 러시아와의 전쟁을 종식시키기 위해 우크라이나에 무기와 안보를 지속 제공할 것이라고 밝혔습니다. So, Ukraine is not yet ready for NATO membership.
Not ready to become a member, not ready to join NATO yet.
Yeah.
Now, the next term we have is to join its ranks. That's the same thing. It means to become a member. If you're a member of the ranks,
Yep.
it just means you are a member of that group, that organization, that team.
It's useful to look at two different terms together when they mean something
right,
that's
exactly.
similar. 네, become a member 아니면 join its ranks 의미가 비슷합니다. 가입하다, 뭐 멤버가 되다 이런 의미가 되겠죠.
But I wouldn't say, so like if I joined a health club,
Yeah.
I would say I'm a member of the health club, but I wouldn't say I joined its ranks.
No.
Joining ranks is more for like an organization.
Yeah, exactly. So joining the ranks of something or joining its ranks is joining an organization. In this case, we're looking at NATO. The term that came up in World News Overview yesterday was premature.
Yes, I actually was going to mention that.
Oh,
But
were
I don't
you?
think we
Yeah.
didn't really talk about it too much yesterday, right? So Biden said it's premature to sort of to begin this process now because Ukraine is in the middle of a war. They are fighting a war right now. It's in progress. So if something is premature, it's too early.
Exactly. Premature. 시기상조다. 너무 이르다. 이런 표현을 어제도 우리가 이제 그 World News Overview에서 봤기 때문에 아마 이제 확실히 기억이 될 겁니다. Repetition is really the best way to memorize a word.
Especially when it's a tricky one.
Yeah, and this is fantastic.
South Africa has topped the list of dangerous destinations for holidaymakers, according to a new study, with the U.S. following behind in holiday destinations that present the most threat to people.
남아프리카 공화국이 세계에서 가장 위험한 휴가지이며 미국은 두 번째로 위험한 휴가지인 것으로 나타났습니다. This is according to a study, and this is for holidaymakers to keep in mind.
This is a word that always confuses me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I think holidaymaker, oh, that means a travel agency that
someone who makes
holidays for me. I want a holiday, they put it all together for me, but it's not. A holidaymaker is someone who's on vacation, a tourist, a traveler.
If it's confusing for you, a native English speaker,
Right.
how confusing is it going to be for a learner of English?
Exactly. It's not a word that I heard a lot growing up. We never said it.
Did you not?
No.
Maybe it's a British thing. I've actually heard this quite a lot.
Okay.
But now that you mention it, if you break it down, holiday maker.
Yeah.
You don't. You go on holiday.
Exactly.
But you don't make the holiday. 자, 그래요. 이제 너무 분석하려고 하면은 오히려 더 헷갈릴 수 있다. 레이 선생님도 뭐 그런 얘기네요. 그러니까 그냥 받아들여야 되겠습니다. holiday maker, 휴가객, 휴가 가는 사람입니다. And there are places, destinations that present a threat to people.
That means they're dangerous. They're risky. A giant panda has given birth to twin cubs at a theme park in Gyeonggi Province, marking the first time that panda twins have been born in Korea nearly 3 years after the first panda was born through natural breeding in the country.
네, 경기도의 한 테마파크에 살고 있는 9살 판다 아이바오가 자연 번식을 통해 암컷 쌍둥이를 낳았습니다. 해당 테마파크는 2020년 국내 처음으로 자연 번식에 성공한 후 이어 쌍둥이 자연 번식에도 이번에 성공했습니다. This is the first time that twin pandas have been born in South Korea. It's very good news.
It is twin 쌍둥이. I know that word.
Yeah.
Cub. That's a baby bear. So puppy is a baby dog, kitten's a baby cat. Cub is used for all bears.
Yes.
Polar bears, black bears, grizzly bears, whatever you say, Cubs.
네.
The Chicago Cubs, the baseball team. Because
Exactly.
the football team is called the Chicago Bears.
Right.
The baseball team is the Chicago Cubs.
Interesting.
And, twins. We have a team called the Twins in Seoul.
Yeah.
But that's taken from the American team, the Minnesota Twins, because Minnesota is a state and they have two big cities that are side by side, St. Paul and Minneapolis. And that area is called the Twin Cities. So that's why they named the baseball team the Twins. Doesn't make as
Got
much
it.
sense, the Korean team naming their team that, but nonetheless, that's where it comes from.
I see. Well, twin cubs here. 쌍둥이 그리고 아기 곰이 되겠습니다. You could say baby bears, but cubs is the official term for it.
Right.
And baby bear just sounds very cute.
Right.
You know. Natural breeding.
Not
artificial.
Not artificial.
Yeah.
What do they? Artificial insemination.
Yeah,
would be
it's
what-
not- yeah,
it's
it's
not
not
that.
that,
They
yeah.
so what the
The panda went into labor.
yeah.
you
What
know,
are their
it's like
names?
Aibao
Aibao
and
and
Lebao.
her husband, boyfriend, partner, Lebao. It was natural. They made sure that they had a nice date,
Yeah.
and
It was natural.
it was
as you said,
natural.
yeah.
They got frisky.
Exactly. Yeah. Natural breeding, 자연 번식이 되겠습니다. 아이바오와 러바오가 이렇게 또 다시 그 아기를 낳는데 쌍둥이예요, 이번에는요.
Korea's job additions remain stronger than expected in June on the back of the senior workforce, according to data, although year-on-year growth slowed for the third consecutive month.
지난달 취업자 수가 고령층 노동 인구에 힘입어 예상보다 강한 증가세를 유지한 것으로 나타났습니다. 그러나 전년 대비 증가 폭은 3개월 연속 둔화했습니다. Alright, so stronger than expected job additions.
That's right. So stronger than expected, better than people thought.
Yeah.
More than people thought there would be.
Exactly. So when
More
you
new jobs.
expect something, you forecast it or you think something's going to happen. And if it's better than expected.
Yeah, sometimes we'll say like this will happen a lot in earning season in finance, or when there's all kinds of analysts and they give their projections on how much money companies are going to make. Sometimes companies will beat their expectations,
Right.
beat their projections.
And again, that means the outcome was stronger than expected.
Stronger or better?
Better than expected. 예상보다 강하다, 예상보다 더 좋다 이런 의미가 있을 수 있고요. The opposite could be weaker than expected.
Exactly. Or lower.
Or lower than expected, yeah, absolutely. Now, if something happens on the back of something, what does that mean?
Due to that thing, due to
Yeah.
the strength of that thing, it's a result of it. And I'll go over the stats in a minute. The over 60 people over 60 years old have added the most jobs. The most jobs were added for people over 60, I should
So it was
say.
due to that.
Due to that, right? It was kind of like riding on the back of those people.
Yeah,
you
I
can
guess
think
you
you can
could-
sort of think
yeah.
about it that way.
Yeah, it's useful to have an image in your head when you memorize words.
Right, on the back of something, I think of it as like riding horseback.
Okay.
Right? So it's that thing that's leading you to that.
그래요. 이 이미지화해서 표현 외우는 방법을 알려주셨어요. On the back of something means due to something. 무언가의 결과로 무언가에 힘입어여서 이게 말을 탄 덕분에 내가 앞으로 나갔다. 뭐 이런 이미지를 상상해보라고 레이 선생님이 조언을 해주셨습니다.
The Seoul city government has approved public transportation fare hikes in the capital, with the basic fare for buses to increase by 300 won from next month, while subway fares will go up by 150 won starting in October.
서울시는 버스 요금을 다음 달부터 300원, 지하철 요금은 오는 10월부터 150원 올리는 대중교통 요금 인상안을 확정했습니다. 이 표현부터 봐야겠죠? The first expression is public transportation fare hikes.
This is not good news for me because I live in Seoul and I
You
take
take-
public
yeah,
transportation
every
every day.
day, right.
Yes, so public transportation means buses and subway. People
Yeah.
movers is another
Sure.
term, funny
Yeah.
term for it, provided by the government to
Right.
the public, to people.
In the UK, we often say public transport.
Yeah, sure, you can say it that way as well. Public transit. Sometimes I take public transit.
Right. But I think in America, they normally just say public transportation,
Yeah, that
not
sounds
transport.
right. Yeah, that sounds right.
And then fare hikes. We're going to look at another term, a basic fare. They both have
Sure.
that word in it.
Sure.
What does that mean?
Well, hike, we do hike
Yeah,
all the time. Hike
yeah,
means to go
go
up,
up,
right?
right.
Now, a fare is the money that you pay to use buses, trains, even taxis. You can call that a fare.
Yeah.
So it's money that you pay. So it's a fee, but we don't use the word fee for public transportation.
Exactly.
You say fare. Use
Right.
fee for things like your membership fee, for
Yeah.
example, or the fee you pay a professional, like a lawyer, for example.
Right. A lawyer's fee or counseling fee.
Sure.
That kind of thing.
Right.
But not bus fee.
No, it's fair.
Fair.
They're all the same thing. It's the
Yeah.
money you pay,
That's right.
but fare is just used for basically buses, trains, taxis.
그렇습니다. 다 요금이라는 의미이긴 한데요. 이렇게 교통수단에는 F-A-R-E, fare를 쓰는 게 일반적이고, 그 다음에는 어떤 이제 전문직에서 일하는 분들을 위해서 우리가 이제 아까 legal lawyers fees 얘기했죠. 우리가 변호사를 선임한다든지 그럴 때는 fare를 낸다고 하지 않고 fee를 낸다라고 하죠. 아니면 membership 얘기를 하셨어요. 그때도 fee를 씁니다. F-E-E. So the basic fare would be
Basic, regular, standard. It's the lowest. It's the lowest amount of money you have to pay. So if you go a longer distance, you might have to pay an additional fare, or you will have to pay an additional fare.
Right.
Always do.
네. 그래서 기본 요금이 되겠죠. Basic fare.
Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu has reportedly said that Moscow would be forced to use its arsenal of cluster bombs if the U.S. supplied similar weapons to Ukraine, according to Russian news agencies.
러시아 뉴스 매체 보도에 따르면 미국이 우크라이나에 집속탄을 지원할 경우 러시아도 유사한 파괴 수단을 쓸 수밖에 없다고 세르게이 쇼이구 러시아 국방장관이 말한 것으로 알려졌습니다.
Is there a rule in Russia that every politician has to look scary? Because this guy does
They
too.
must be trained. I don't know.
I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so to be forced to do something
Yeah,
means
we're gonna. The next headline has this word as well. So keep this word in mind
Okay.
because they're different. They have the same meaning. So He's saying, if you're forced to do something, it means you have to do it.
You have no choice.
You have no choice. Your back's against the wall. You must do it, or somebody is making you do it.
Right.
You don't want to, but someone's making you do it.
할 수밖에 없는 거죠.
Yeah, you've been forced to do it. So he's saying, if the U.S. does this, then we have to do it, which isn't true.
Right, exactly.
You don't have to. You're not being forced to do it.
That is not the only option.
No, you're choosing to do it as well.
However, that's what he's
saying.
said.
That's what he says. In the next headline, we're going to see the people had no choice.
Yeah,
they
that's
had to
literally.
leave. That's literally.
그래요. 그러니까 have no choice. You have to do something. 정말 어쩔 수 없이 뭐뭐 해야 할 때 be forced to do something이라고 얘기를 많이 하는데 여기서는 사실 이제 러시아 국방장관의 얘기입니다. 미국이 집속탄을 계속 이렇게 지원을 하면 러시아도 유사한 파괴수단을 쓸 수밖에 없다. We are forced to do it. 뭐 이렇게 얘기를 했다고 해요. And let's look at this other term. We'll get
sorry.
to that.
Can we just do this one really quickly here? So sometimes I think people will say they're forced to do something as a bit of a threat. So it's like, if you're saying you might do something that I don't like, then I might say, well, if it's a conditional, if you do that, then I'll be forced to do something that I know you don't like. So it's a way of just letting the other party know, if don't do that.
And in a very extreme case, I guess your boss could say, if you do that again, I'm just going to have to be forced to fire you.
Right, I'm going to be forced to fire you. I have no choice. And it's like, no, you do.
And that's a threat.
It's a threat. Like when it's used this way, bit of a threat.
It is. 맞아요. 때로는 이렇게 위협처럼 내가 이렇게 할 수밖에 없을 거다라고 할 때 쓰기도 하죠. 잠시 후에 다섯 번째 헤드라인에서는 좀 다르게 정말 어쩔 수 없이 무언가를 하게 됐을 때도 be forced to가 쓰는 걸 볼 수 있을 겁니다. And then Arsenal.
We're not talking about the football team.
I was actually going to mention that, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
But tell us what it means, first of all.
Sure. So an arsenal is a country, it's usually a country, their collection of weapons and military equipment.
Exactly. Arsenal이라는 거는요, 무기고라는 뜻입니다. 무기 공장이죠. And I was going to mention the football team because the Arsenal Football Club in England, it started off with workers at an Arsenal factory.
And the logo has a cannon on it.
Literally, they were working at an Arsenal, a weapons factory.
Building the arsenal, building the UK's arsenal.
And they thought, why don't we form a football club?
Well, that's a good name. It's a cool name.
Yeah, exactly. 그래서 진짜로 영국의 아스널 FC는요, 그 런던 울버치에 있는 무기고 공장에서 그 일하던 노동자들이 모여서 만든 축구팀이에요. 그래서 이름이 Arsenal Football Club이 된 겁니다. 무기고, Arsenal.
Residents of a gated community in Southern California were forced to leave their $1 million homes over the weekend due to an inexplicable landslide that sent multiple houses on a slow-motion downward slide, collapsing roofs and cracking walls along the way.
지난 주말 캘리포니아 남부의 한 고급 주택가에서 알 수 없는 이유로 집안이 움직이는 현상이 발생해 해당 거주자들이 긴급 대피했습니다. 이번 사고로 고가의 주택 다수가 서서히 붕괴돼 지붕이 내려앉고 벽에 금이 가는 피해를 입었습니다. 자, 표현부터 볼게요. A gated community.
Literally, gated communities have a big gate at the entrance of this neighborhood. It's a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then there's a gate. Like I used to go and cut the grass, do landscaping at a lot of gated
Quite
communities.
posh.
They're they're usually really expensive. It's inexpensive. The homes are expensive. The idea is that people need to live there or have permission to even enter the neighborhood.
그렇죠. 이제 고급 주택가를 얘기하는 건데요. 게이트가 울타리나 담이 있는 그런 외부인 출입 금지 내지는 제한이 되어 있는 고급 주택가입니다. And there was an inexplicable landslide.
If something's inexplicable, it means we can't explain it. We don't know what happened, how it happened, why it happened. And in this case, they're still investigating it.
Yeah, it's unexplainable.
Yeah, exactly.
그래요. inexplicable 하고 unexplainable 아니면 unfathomable 다 마찬가지로 이유를 알 수 없다.
If I use unfathomable, I'm kind of usually like, it's
hard to understand.
Hard to understand. I can't
Yeah.
believe it. It's
Right,
unfathomable that this
okay.
would happen.
그건
But
좀
this is a little bit
unbelievable.
too.
Yeah, okay. 그럴 때는 이제 믿을 수 없다, unfathomable 이런 단어들도 있는데요.
Usually, a lot of times, if people say unbelievable, it means it's amazing and really great too. It's like one of my friends in Canada. That is like his go-to word. If he's like, "Oh, this food is unbelievable. Oh, I saw this movie. It's unbelievable." He
Right.
says it all the time.
Right.
And he's just meaning it's amazing. It's
Exactly.
so great.
Well, you mentioned food just there, but instead of saying delicious, which I think a lot of learners of English will say all the time,
Yeah.
change it up. You know, say
Right.
unbelievable, it's great,
So
it's
good.
so good.
It's bussin'.
Yeah, exactly. Use different adjectives, as many as you can.
Right.
Well, not in one go.
Right,
Every time.
Yeah, Koreans do really learn delicious. Like,
Delicious.
do you like this? What is delicious? Is that delicious?
Yeah,
This is delicious.
So maybe next time you could use what Ray's friend uses.
Yeah.
This is
Oh, this is
unbelievable.
unbelievable.
진짜 맛있다.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amid speculation that U.S. President Joe Biden had broken royal protocol by patting Britain's King Charles III on the back, a Buckingham Palace source reportedly said the monarch was comfortable and did not mind Biden's gesture.
영국 방문 중인 조 바이든 미국 대통령이 국왕 찰스 3세 등에 손을 얹은 행동이 왕실 의전을 어겼다는 추측이 일고 있는 가운데 왕실 측은 국왕이 해당 제스처에 편안해했으며 이를 문제 삼지 않았다고 밝힌 것으로 전해졌습니다. Let's talk about protocol and breaking royal protocol. What does this mean?
Protocol means rules and acceptable behavior. The
Yeah.
things that the way they are supposed to act and the way you're supposed to act in the presence of a monarch or
Exactly.
a member of the royal family.
And even if you don't have a royal family in your country, diplomats will have protocols.
Oh, sure.
So every country, you know, they have their own rules, you know, certain things you have to do in diplomacy.
And sometimes they're unwritten rules.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just what you should do. It's tradition.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what most people do.
그래서 여기서는 breaking the protocol이니까요. 그 의전을 어기다 이런 의미겠죠. 의전이나 의례 같은 거를 protocol이라고 합니다.
But you could also think of it like when you come into work, do you see your 팀장 or your 부장님? You don't go and give them knucks or give them a high five, right?
guess
You
so.
bow to them in Korea, right? You know,
That's protocol?
Yeah, I would say so. It's kind of acceptable behavior.
그럴 수 있겠네요. But I don't know. Maybe next time you could try doing a little fist
Really?
pump.
With the 부장님 high five? With the
해보세요.
부장님? Is
네,
that
지금 레이 선생님이 그러니까
Yeah,
이거
she
보통
says, yeah, okay. I'm going to break Korean protocol.
우리의 프로토콜은 부장님한테 이게 목례를 하는 것이지만 우리 한번 브레이크 해보자. 레이가 제안을 했습니다. 다음에 이제 fist pump
Yeah.
이렇게 안녕
Right.
이렇게 한번 해보실 거예요.
Fist bump,
진짜?
yeah.
아, 알겠습니다. 나가실 때 한번 해보세요. 근데 여기 영국의 국왕이 I don't mind 이렇게 얘기했어요. Hopefully our 부장님 will say
Right,
this. I
right.
don't mind.
That just means like, 괜찮아요.
괜찮아요. 이 뜻이죠. I don't mind.
I don't mind.
근데 만약에 if someone said I mind.
Yeah, I care. Care. It's like, oh, I don't care. I don't mind. I think it sounds a little bit nicer than saying
Yeah.
you don't care. I use this a lot for polite requests. Like I teach this a lot to say to someone, like if you want them to do something for you, would you mind? Would you mind sending me this? Would you mind giving me this? Would you mind finishing this by 5 o'clock, for example?
What's the proper way to answer that?
The proper way would just be
Yes or
usually
no?
yes or no, right? It's just like saying, can you do this for me?
Yeah.
Would you mind? It just sounds nicer.
So how would you answer? Because the reason I'm asking is because I think technically if you said, do you mind something? You should say, no, I don't mind.
Technically,
But
right.
a lot of people will actually say, sure, yeah, all right,
yes, right. They answer it as if you're saying, can you do this for
Yeah.
me? Yeah, you're right.
맞아요. 그래서 이 mind가 좀 헷갈릴 수 있는 표현이에요. 원래 의미는 이제 뭔가를 상관하다, 개의하다라는 의미여서 부정문으로 더 많이 쓰죠. I don't mind. 난 개의치 않아요. 상관없어요. 괜찮아요. I don't mind라고 많이 쓰는데.
That's how you should answer it.
그렇죠.
예.
근데 만약에 누가 질문으로 Do you mind?
Oh, I don't mind.
이거 좀 해주실래요? 라고 물어봤을 때는 I don't mind. 아니면은 원어민들 중에는 그냥 sure. 알았어요. Yes. Yes. 이렇게 대답하면서 이제 할 때도 있는데 이거를 너무 따지고 들어가면은 싫다는 건가? 이럴 수 있지만 그냥 받아들인다는 의미입니다. Right. So it's a bit of a tricky one.
No, that's interesting though. I didn't like native speakers
Yeah.
don't even think of that.
Yeah, there you
Right?
go. Okay, so mind was that expression there.
Right.
The Labour and Management sectors presented their Sixth Amendment proposals at the 13th plenary meeting of the Minimum Wage Commission on Thursday.
노사는 어제 최저임금위원회 제13차 전원회의에서 6차 수정안을 제시했습니다. 자, 일단 이 수정안을 한번 볼게요. Amendment proposal.
Okay, let's deal with amendment first. An amendment is a change to something, usually an improvement, one might think, one might hope. For example, if you look at the American Bill of Rights, they have the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and so on, where they added in other rules or other laws. Here, this is when we're asking for a change to something, in this case, a change to the minimum wage. And we're asking because it's a proposal.
Exactly.
A proposal is when you're asking for something. The most common word I would connect with proposal, of course, would be wedding proposal. When someone gets down on one knee and says, "Sue, will you marry me?"
No.
Fair enough.
우리가 이제 프로포즈 하다라고 하잖아요. That is the verb to propose, but the noun form is proposal.
Yes.
And it's not used just for weddings and
no.
marriages, but it can be used to propose anything, an idea.
Exactly. So in formal situations, you might say to your boss, "I have a proposal for the company," meaning you've got a new idea about what you can do or maybe a new project you want to embark on.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you want to marry the company.
No, and I don't think you're allowed to.
Oh, you're not? Okay, I see. So a proposal, 제안을 하는 거죠. And a wedding proposal is exactly the same thing, really.
You're asking for something.
Yeah, you have this idea of you and your girlfriend or boyfriend becoming a married couple. You are proposing it,
Yeah.
basically.
So good luck to anyone who's proposing this weekend.
Exactly, yes. And an amendment is like a change, a legal change. So together we have 수정안, amendment proposal. Now, what about a plenary meeting?
Oh, Sue, I had to look this word up. I've never used the word plenary in my life.
It's not something you hear in everyday conversation.
It's not. So don't worry if you don't know this word. That's okay, because I didn't either. But what it means basically is that everybody's attending. This is a full meeting. All the participants are there. So in this case, this is very important at the Minimum Wage Commission, because if you only had Labour or you only had management there, well, that wouldn't be right. Everybody has to be there so they can propose an amendment to the minimum wage.
Exactly. 전원회의죠. Plenary meeting. Sometimes we hear plenary session. So Plenary.
Only 3 in 10 workers in Seoul in their 40s say they expect to work until retirement age, according to a new survey conducted on 1,189 respondents.
재직 중인 40대 서울시민 1,189명을 대상으로 현재 일자리 전망을 조사한 결과 10명 중 3명만이 정년까지 일할 것으로 기대한다고 답변했습니다. 정년, in English, retirement age?
Yes, this is the age at which you should or you are advised to stop working. This is terrible. I honestly don't know what the minimum, what the retirement age is in the UK anymore. When I was growing up, it was 65 for men and 60 for women, but it's changed again, and I haven't kept up with it. It doesn't mean you can't work after the retirement age, but it's the age at which most people will retire, and companies may ask you to retire at that age.
Exactly. In Korea, it's generally 60,
Yes.
depending on your company and who you work for. But it looks like only 3 out of 10 people in Seoul, in their 40s, that is, think they will be working until that age. 그래서 지금 이제 이 정년, retirement age까지 일할 것으로 예상이 된다. 뭐 그렇게 기대된다라고 대답한 사람이 10명 중 3명밖에 안 된다고 합니다. So the people who answered or responded, they are called respondents.
Yes, because they have responded. So when we talk about surveys, you'll hear the term respondent used a lot because they're the people who were surveyed and responded to the survey.
Right. There are certain terms that will always come up
Yes.
when it comes to surveys or studies, and especially surveys. you'll have the word respondent, 응답자.
Yeah, and a similar term is correspondent.
Correspondent,
Yes, which could be whether you're writing letters to each other or journalists are sometimes referred to as correspondents. Our correspondent in the US tells us about what's happening with the elections, for example.
아, 그러네요. 비슷하게 생겼는데 correspondent for the news, 특파원이 되겠죠.
3 UN agencies have warned that an ongoing rise in avian flu outbreaks globally raised concerns that the virus might adapt to infect humans more easily and urged countries to strengthen disease surveillance and improve hygiene at poultry farms.
조류 독감이 지속 증가하면서 인간에 감염될 가능성도 갈수록 커지고 있다고 UN 세계기관에서 경고했습니다. 이에 따라 각 국가별 질병 감시를 강화하고 가금류 농장 위생을 개선할 것을 촉구했습니다. 자, this virus might adapt to infect humans.
Yes. Now, the term adapt means to change. It means to evolve.
Yeah, in
and
this case, yeah.
usually to meet some kind of condition or to get over some kind of obstacle, to find a way through. So it's similar to amend, but we would not use them in the same cases.
Right.
They're both about changing, but adapt and adaptation, we think of, for example, adapting a book into a film. Where we change it into a movie, or we adapt to a situation when you start at a new job. It may be unfamiliar, but you get used to it and you find out how you need to behave in the office.
Adaptations we might hear as well. But in this case, of course, this is the kind of adaptation you don't want to happen.
No, when a virus adapts to infect humans.
You don't want that.
No.
그래요. 적응하다라는 의미가 있는데 사실 여기서는 바이러스가 인간에게 감염될 정도로 뭐 좀 진화한다든지 적응이 될 가능성이 제기가 되고 있는 겁니다. 우리가 원치 않는 거죠. And what about disease surveillance?
Well, first of all, the term disease is some kind of illness or sickness that spreads from human to human, or animal to animal, or bird to bird, or unfortunately, perhaps bird to human. And surveillance, well, that's when we're watching something, we're monitoring something. I think of the famous catchphrase from George Orwell, Big Brother is watching you, from 1984, the idea that everybody is being watched. In this case, we're not watching humans per se, we're watching the disease. We're making sure that we follow the spread of the disease and we know where it's being transmitted and to what it's being transmitted.
Exactly. Surveillance, 감시. But we often talk about surveillance cameras.
Sure.
Another word for that is CCTV.
Yes.
What's that short for?
Closed circuit television.
Thank you very much. Closed circuit television. But yes, surveillance camera is just another word for that.
Yeah, and we can talk about the police having somebody under surveillance, meaning they're being watched.
Yeah.
Either they know they're being watched or maybe they don't.
So a suspect could be under surveillance.
Exactly.
And that means police are watching them. Disease surveillance는 질병 감시가 되겠습니다.
A sudden marine heat wave off the coast of Florida in the US has surprised scientists and sent water temperatures soaring to unprecedented highs, threatening one of the most severe coral bleaching events the state has ever seen.
미국 플로리다 해안의 고온 현상으로 산호초 지대의 수온이 기록적인 수준으로 상승하며 산호초 폐사의 전 단계인 백화 현상이 우려되고 있습니다. 백화 현상부터 먼저 볼까요? 우린 거꾸로. Coral bleaching?
Yes, and this is where the coral literally turns white. It bleaches. This term bleaching, if you think of getting your hair dyed, I don't know, have you ever bleached your hair,
I
Sue?
have, yeah.
Yeah, that's where you take all the colour out of it.
Have you?
No, my hair's too thin as it is. My hair's too weak. I think it would all fall out.
여러분은 탈색 해보셨나요? 저희 지금 스텝을 보니까 탈색하신 분 하나도 없는 것 같은. 저는 탈색 해봤어요.
네.
네, 탈색이 bleaching이에요.
Yes.
네,
And
그래서, 네.
But here we're talking about basically the coral dying. And when it gets too hot, it turns white. It bleaches.
그렇죠. 자, coral이라는 단어가 붙었기 때문에 산호초가 이렇게 탈색이 되는 것처럼 백화 현상이 일어나는 것을 말합니다. 자, 그 다음 표현으로 앞에 나왔었는데 marine heat wave.
Yes, we've talked about heat waves on the show before. It's when we have extreme heat for a period of time. If it's marine, that means of the sea. For example, submarine. Submarine is a vehicle that goes under the sea because sub means under. Or a mariner. A mariner is an old word for sailor, like the Samuel Taylor Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, that very famous epic poem.
네, marine, something to do with the sea, and heat wave. We hear this a lot, especially during the summertime. 여기서는 그러니까 해안의 고온 현상을 말하고 있다고 볼 수 있겠습니다.
The global music industry surpassed 1 trillion streams at the fastest pace ever in a calendar year, according to a report, with Spanish and Korean language music being among the most popular during the first half of 2023.
올해 전 세계 음원 스트리밍 횟수가 역대 가장 빠른 속도로 석 달 만에 1조 건에 돌파했으며 특히 스페인어와 한국어 음원이 상반기에 큰 인기를 끌었습니다. Okay, so streaming, let's look at that.
Well, that's when you, in this case, listen to something over the internet without downloading it. You're listening to it as it comes to you.
Yeah.
So we talk about streaming video, streaming music. This is something that I think almost all of us in Korea are doing on a daily basis.
It's like live broadcasting, except it's not broadcasting, it's on the internet.
Yes, but we're streaming on YouTube.
We are right now. 그렇죠? 실시간으로 이게 재생되는 뭐 영상이나 음악이나 이런 것들을 이제 스트리밍 한다고 얘기를 하죠. 방송은 스트리밍이라고 하지 않습니다. 우리는 broadcasting live라고 하는데요.
Exactly, yes.
같은 개념이에요. 다만 이제 방송국을 통해서 하는 게 아니라 인터넷을 통해서 한다. 근데 우리 모닝 스페셜은 둘 다 지금 하고 있습니다.
Yeah.
We are live and we are streaming live on YouTube as well.
Exactly. We get the best of both worlds.
We do. What's a calendar year?
Well, from January 1st through to December 31st. That is your calendar year. We can talk about 1 year being that period of 365 days, but if it's a calendar year, it's from the start of the calendar to the end of the calendar.
Whereas there's the fiscal year, and that can be a little bit different depending on which country you're talking about.
Exactly, yes.
But it's not January 1st to December 31st.
Yeah, we can also have the school year.
Yes, the school year as well.
Yeah, again, that starts at a different time to the calendar year, but it lasts a year.
There you go. And do you have a Paul year starting on your birthday?
No, Sue.
No, you don't?
No, Sue. I
You
follow the
should.
calendar year.
All right. 자, calendar year는 이제 달력에 따라서 우리가 1월 1일부터 12월 31일까지 있는 그 기간을 말을 하는 거고요. Depending on the industry you're talking about, you can have different kinds of years. Fiscal year, school year, 뭐 이런 표현들도 있죠. 그때 날짜가 좀 다릅니다.